Welcome back. Just as I mentioned, the webinar will be for 2 hours. Please let us put our questions in the Q&A icon so that we can get to treat them. Once again, we want to thank everyone for joining us. I welcome you very warmly on behalf of our President and Chairman of Council, and indeed every member of the Chamber. We welcome you very warmly. It is now time to welcome our President and Chairman of Council, Mr. Kayode Falowo, to deliver his welcome address. Mr. Falowo, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aki Oshutoki. Thank you for the opening remarks you made. Good afternoon, patrons and council members of the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and all our guests, I am delighted to welcome you all to today's webinar. Let me commence these brief remarks by welcoming you all to the new year with great pleasure and with confident expectations that 2021 will be a year of peace and prosperity for you, your families, and your businesses. Even though the world is still confronted with the unprecedented challenges from 2020, I believe the lessons and insights gained will better position us to surmount the obstacles we may face in the course of 2021. This indeed is one of our major objectives for organizing this webinar themed 2021 Economic Outlook. The Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce believes that it is a key imperative for all our stakeholders to conduct a robust and exhaustive assessment of this year's economic outlook, as well as identify the threats and opportunities for business in Nigeria. The Chamber is the foremost bilateral chamber in Nigeria and was established in 1977 to promote trade and investment between Nigeria and Britain. The NBCC, as many of you know, is affiliated with the British Chamber of Commerce, which provides value beneficial access to a network of 53 chambers of commerce across the UK and 49 other international affiliates. The NBCC currently has about 350 top corporate organizations from all sectors of the Nigerian economy and indeed from the UK. We encourage participants at this event who are interested in joining the chamber to commence the process by visiting our website and filling the necessary membership forms, which you will find in our website. And upon completion of that process, of course, you will then have access to the tremendous membership benefits of the foremost bilateral chamber of commerce in Nigeria. The objectives of this event are in alignment with our cardinal mandate as a chamber and our commitment to upscale the value proposition for members and all our stakeholders. This webinar is our first event of the new year, and as is our usual practice, we have invited experts and key stakeholders to share their knowledge and wealth of experience. I'm sure some of you followed some of our activities last year, and indeed we had very, very rich programs, very well attended, that cut across various topics, and we intend to repeat the same this year. But to start it all off, on behalf of the Council, I am quite delighted to welcome Mr. Ben Llewellyn-Jones, the British Deputy High Commissioner, who will be delivering a goodwill message very shortly. Ben is an experienced diplomat who has worked in different parts of the world. Previously, he worked at the British High Commission in Abuja in the role of political counselor from July 2014 to July 2017. So this is his second tour of duty in Nigeria. I'm sure Ben would not be a stranger to pepper soup and jollof rice and all the many delights that Nigeria is associated with. Ben has also served as the British High Commissioner to Rwanda and non-resident ambassador to Burundi from 2011 to 2014. He has held a range of responsibilities, including as the lead on the UK's policy and programs on climate change, business and investment, as well as policing and prevention of organized crime. Ben Llewellyn-Jones was awarded the Order of the British Empire, OB, by Her Majesty the Queen in 2009 for his service to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, now known as Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. He was most recently the Deputy High Commissioner to South Africa between August 2017 and August 2020. Thereafter, he joined us in Nigeria. You're welcome, Ben, to today's event, and we look forward to sharing from your wealth of experience. One of our distinguished speakers at this event is a man that is very well known in Nigeria and certainly internationally, particularly when you are discussing economics of Nigeria, economic affairs of Africa, and indeed the rest of the world. He is Mr. Bismarck Rewani, Chief Executive Officer, Financial Derivatives Company Limited. He has rich and extensive experience as an economist, banker, and financial analyst. Mr. Rewani graduated from the University of Ibadan with a bachelor's degree in economics in 1972. He has worked at several blue-chip financial institutions within Nigeria and abroad, holding various senior management positions in companies such as the International Merchant Bank, Nigeria Limited. He is a chartered member of the Institute of Bankers of England and Wales and a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Bankers. He was also with the First National Bank of Chicago, Barclays Bank of Nigeria, and Barclays Bank International PLC, United Kingdom. He is a Nigerian that many of us are proud of, and I'm sure today we shall learn from his very, very rich experience. Our second speaker, Mr. Innocent Ike, the Acting Managing Director and CEO of Polaris Bank Limited, is an astute finance and banking professional with over 3 decades of an outstanding career at leading commercial banks in Nigeria. He has led teams to develop and execute major corporate transformation and turnaround projects in the Nigerian financial services industry, leveraging his in-depth industry experience and knowledge of relevant technologies and innovation. Innocent is a graduate of accounting from the University of Lagos, where he emerged as the best graduating student in 1988. He is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, a certified IFRS expert, and an honorary senior member of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. He holds an executive certificate in strategy and innovation from MIT Sloan School of Management, Boston, and has at various times attended global management and leadership programs at world-class institutions, including the Harvard Business School, the Wharton Business School, and the IMD Switzerland. He's also a member of the Institute of Directors. Our moderator at today's event is our own dear Mrs. Nigerian-British. When I say our own dear, it's because she's part of the programs committee and a very, very active member of our council. Of course, Innocent is our dear one too, and I believe Bismarck is also our dear one. So Mrs. Nigerian-British is the founder and lead consultant of Fizzle Praxis Consulting Limited. She earned a diploma and postgraduate diploma from the University of Calabar before proceeding to the Open University of Nigeria for a Master of Science degree in Management in 2009. She's a 2008 Draper Hills Fellow on Democracy, Development, and Rule of Law at Stanford University, California, and an alumnus of the Harvard Business School Executive Education Program. Ms. Abimbola is currently completing a law degree at the University of London. I also specially recognize today our patrons who indeed have led this chamber over the years successfully, the council members and members of companies who have joined us at this webinar. I also want to thank especially the Programs Committee and the MBCC Secretariat for their effort in putting together this important and topical event. I thank you all for your attention and wish you a productive session as we take a deep dive into the economic outlook for 2021. I now have the pleasure to invite today's moderator, Mrs. Abimbola, and the speakers, Mr. Bismarck Rewani and Mr. Innocent Ike, and indeed the British Deputy High Commissioner, Mr. Ben Llewellyn-Jones, who will deliver a good message. Thank you all for your attention, and God bless you. Mrs. Abimbola, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. It's already past 12. It is a delight to have every one of you. I will quickly just call on Mr. Ben Llewellyn-Jones for his goodwill message.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping that my video will start, but if it does not, no problem. I'm Ben Llewellyn-Jones. I'm the British Deputy High Commissioner here in Lagos, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. President, and to all for this opportunity. Very briefly to say just this: firstly, of course, Happy New Year, but secondly, the commitment and support of the British Deputy High Commission in Lagos, and indeed the UK and Nigeria team, remains to support all those trying to do business here in Nigeria from a Nigerian-British perspective, and indeed we're here to help in any way that we can. So really, that's my first and most important message: support to you, sirs, and to the Chamber, and indeed to all those trying to make business work. Secondly, I'm really interested to hear our speakers, so this is why I'll speak briefly. But I think whatever challenges 2021 poses us, I think we've learned a lot about resilience and the ways in which we can overcome the challenges we faced in 2020. And I think 2021 is an opportunity to at least to build back better if we can, but at least to reflect on the transition to a low carbon economy globally, what that means for Nigeria, and indeed on how we can do that in Nigeria and work towards COP26, the Conference of Parties on Climate Change, at the end of this year, which is being hosted in the UK. It's also an opportunity, I think, if there are challenges this year, and there will be, to look at some of the tough but necessary economic reforms that Nigeria might undertake that would help with competitiveness and help attract more foreign direct investment. So we at the British High Commission are not just here to help trade and investment, but really to encourage those economic reforms. And I'm very committed that we do that. Many of you would have joined, I think, the UK Africa Investment Conference yesterday, which the Prime Minister opened, and other speakers, including the head of the African Development Bank, spoke at and talked about the opportunity of Africa. We had, I think it was about 900 in the end, Nigerian participants in that conference, which I think reflects both the interest of Nigerian-British participants, which reflects the interest in Nigeria in the UK, and indeed the interest of Nigeria in the UK as well. And I think we build from that, and that's very important, whatever challenges we face. And then finally, I look forward to both hearing what the speakers say, but also reflecting thereafter on how we can work together to address both the challenges they articulate and the many opportunities that are there present. So that's what I'll finish. I'll listen to the main event, look forward to it, and thank you once again, and look forward to the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so very much. Right away, we'll go into today's event, and I would like at this point to invite our first speaker for the day, Mr. Innocent Ike, who is the Acting Managing Director for Polaris Bank. Mr. Ike, please. You will need to unmute your mic.
So, apologies. Good afternoon, Mr. President and Chairman of Council of the Chamber. Good afternoon, Mr. Oshuntoki, the Chairman of the Programs Committee, Mr. Bismarck Rewani, and then the British Deputy High Commissioner. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I say good afternoon to every one of us and welcome all of us to today's event. I take special joy listening to the few remarks made by the Chairman and President of the Council, in trying to put set a context to the discussions for today. Basically saying, as human beings and as people who have lived through the challenges and difficulties of 2020, what lessons do we take from those challenges, and how do we leverage on those lessons to identify the threats and opportunities that we face in 2021? Because basically, what we should be focusing on, having gone through the difficulties of last year, the major conversation should be how do we move forward? So I will just quickly go through a few talking points that I've put together, knowing that the detailed explanations and the detailed discussions, of course, I will leave that for Mr. Bismarck, who is a world-renowned expert in that area. Quickly, 2020 was indeed an unprecedented year for reasons that are known to almost every one of us. The coronavirus pandemic shocked the world with global economies, suspended activities, particularly from Q2 all through to Q3, and even in some parts of the world, as we talk, they're still going through lockdowns. Oil prices hit record lows, and businesses were grounded due to lockdowns. Stock markets dipped, global demand and supply chains were disrupted, and several markets slipped into recessions, of which Nigeria went into recession last year. And of course, the IMF, of course, projected that the economies were going to go through difficulties with the global GDP, suffering, a decline of about 4.4%. And then several governments, as it were, being responsible governments, had to find some ways of rising up to those challenges in order to provide economic lifelines, for their citizens, and came up with various packages. And some of those packages are still, in effect till today. The local economy suffered what one could describe as double warming. So as the global economy was suffering from the coronavirus pandemic, in October, we also had the NSAS protest, which further, contributed to our challenges as an economy and as a nation. So domestically, what we found out, or what happened, was at the end of the day, all this culminated in, a more severe economic impact on the Nigerian economy was than what the whole world, or what the world, went through in the course of the year. And inflation, of course, became the worst we've seen in recent years. Food supplies and agricultural chain were disrupted. Logistics were disrupted. The economy was in lockdown. The currency went through challenges, difficulties as well. Unemployment worsened. Poverty levels went up. Purchasing power. Of course, when people are at home, people were no longer employed. People were not earning salary. So surviving and meeting their daily needs was a big problem, and therefore standard of living deteriorated. In the midst of that, of course, the monetary authorities rose up to the challenge and came up with policies that some of us, or some people, saw as very, very challenging. And of course, one would expect that as responsible monetary authorities, they need to rise up to those challenges. So the economy, as it were, had to go through a second wave of recession in 5 years, as it were. And in response, the federal government rolled out stimulus packages, across various economic sectors, with the CBN supporting various monetary stimulus, palliatives, intervention funds, here and there. Those packages are well known to us, and I will only further discuss them in the context of how do we take advantage of those opportunities, really, to ensure that we move forward and drive economic development in 2020 or in 2021. So the next point really is what, in terms of the outlook globally for 2021. I will leave that for Mr. Bismarck Rwani. But in summary, what we get, the sense is that the economic activities will be subdued and uneven global growth in 2021. For oil prices, because activities and the global, at the global level aren't yet back fully because of the fear of the second wave of the coronavirus as it were. So demand for oil will still be muted. And for us as a country that largely depends on oil, that means further challenges for us. Capital flow. Economies are just about struggling to deal with their issues domestically. So global capital flows, of course, will be adversely affected. And at best, it's seen, it will be muted. In terms of policies, governments are looking at how to be able to be more accommodative in terms of how do we ensure that we avoid further deterioration in terms of the economic situation in their respective countries. Now, in the midst of all that, one thing that became prominent was what you call the acceleration of digital disruption. This is something we knew was always coming, but then with lockdowns, we had to find some ways of dealing with everyday situations, solving everyday problems. And the recourse was to technology. So today, you find out that technology has become a way of life. That's why, for instance, we are holding this session today under a very, in a virtual mode, instead of gathering in some room in a federal palace or a hotel, where we'll have a physical session. For us, at the domestic level, the key issues are looking at 2021. I would like to situate it dimension it this way. So, externally, what do we expect? Okay, in terms of, driving the journey, the recovery journey for the country. So externally, we always look forward to people. Demand for our goods and our services, supply of capital, supply of inputs, technology, equipment, raw materials, and sometimes manpower. Now, with all I've said, it is clear that demand for goods, as it were, will be challenged because the global economies are not yet fully recovered. Supply of capital, countries are still dealing with their own domestic issues. So even as the Deputy High Commissioner has said, no matter how much you love your friend or your neighbor, you have to deal. You have to first of all solve your own problems first, rescue yourself before you begin to rescue your neighbors. I know very well that we have a very, very strong relationship with the UK government, and of course, they would like to do everything possible. But the UK is also going through difficulties as it were. Supply of inputs, global supply chains have disrupted. So we're going to have problems in terms of and challenges importing, bringing equipment, raw materials, and of course, this will affect productivity. It therefore means that as a nation, we need to look more inward. And looking inward, the first point is who are these major actors we look? We look towards government. Apart from the various measures government has put in place in 2020, okay, to try and arrest the situation, the government has also gone ahead to do something very, very unique and commendable for 2021. For the first time in recent years, we have a budget, okay, approved by the president together with the 2020 Finance Act, all on 31st December. Therefore, setting the right tone in terms of seriousness to deal with a challenging situation, and in terms of also providing the environment for businesses to be able to plan and look forward in terms of, how do we plan our activities? What do we need to do? How do we resource our activities and, put all together really in terms of how do we move forward? And that's something that is very, very commendable. So beyond that, we have to look at other ways of making sure that we deal with our issue. We'll deal with the challenges we had in 2021. So those areas are one, in terms of technology and digital adoption. This is an area that as businesses and as organizations, we must take advantage of, because we can't afford to be dealing with the problems of today, the world of today, with the mindset that is no longer relevant and applicable to today's world. And against the context that, look, oil prices and demand are unlikely to notch upwards quickly, we therefore, as a nation, must begin to think of how do we how do we look inward? How do we source our inputs? How do we, and raw materials locally? How do we drive the process of capital formation, building capital locally, rather than hoping that some FDIs are going to come in to help us? How do we deal with the issue of foreign exchange, which was, a major challenge all through 2020 into 2021? The central bank has no way of, providing or meeting all the foreign exchange requirements of this economy today. So we, as private sector, must therefore work with the government and look at where the opportunities are, so that we can begin to, one, de-emphasize imports where we must not necessarily do it, build local capacities, and be able to drive economic development on a sustainable basis. I've already mentioned some of it, but it's important to just run through some of those things that we need to bear in mind as businesses and organizations. Low interest rate environment of today provides a good opportunity for businesses to go into long-term capital investments because interest rates are low and hopefully will remain stable. There are intervention facilities. So how do we assess these facilities? If we have not accessed them, what are we waiting for? If we thought the disruptions that we went through in 2020 were going to be short-lived, today we know better. Investors' confidence in the economy is on the uptick because there's local demand. Yes, it is true we have some other challenges in terms of infrastructure, power, and rest of them, but the truth is that the opportunities are veiled in those challenges, and it's only if we tap those opportunities that we actually begin to drive, and progress in our journey towards a sustainable economic growth. The land borders have been opened again, and there's the African Continental Free Trade Act that provides enormous opportunity for us as a nation to take advantage of. So in terms of where are these opportunities? These opportunities are in the agriculture and agricultural value chain, manufacturing and manufacturing value chain, infrastructure, digital, as I have mentioned. And we must therefore effectively promote enterprise, okay, and leverage private capital, to take advantage of these opportunities. And that's where both the government and the private sector, particularly the financial institutions, come in. So what is the role for banks? What's the role for financial institutions? The intervention funds are there, but not a large number of businesses have been able to take advantage of those intervention funds. Why? And that's a question we'll ask ourselves. Is it that we believe that the problems of 2020 were transient in nature? And like I said before, today we know better. So we need to now begin to say, look, how do we take advantage of all those opportunities? It's time for us to work with the financial services providers, banks, to take advantage of the various intervention funds, whether it's for health sector, whether it's for manufacturing, agriculture, infrastructure, and name it. There is a huge opportunity there. The key takeaway points, really, which I would like to conclude with is, one, as a chamber, what must we then do? What must we take interest in making sure that we deal with? One is advocacy. So as a member of, as a global player and a member of the British Chamber of Commerce, as the International Chamber of Commerce, this chamber must take very, very active part and position in driving advocacy, both in terms of engagement with the government, the monetary and fiscal authorities, to ensure that the policies being put in place today are put in place in such a way that they will remain sustainable and they will endure, support, and promote, so as to promote investments. So by doing so, the chamber would have, contributed immensely in driving, economic growth. Today, the exchange rate has, depreciated over time. We are taught in international, international, elementary international economics, really, that when your currencies are depreciating, it's an opportunity for you to export because your goods, are exported or are seen as being cheaper in other countries. That's an opportunity that we need to look at. And for us to mobilize capital and work with the financial institutions, the chamber must also begin to have conversations around how to make sure that we entrench a very, very sound credit culture because some of the businesses are not able to access, the loans I mentioned, the intervention loans that come at very, very low prices because they haven't had good credit history. And of course, the foreign, the FDIs or even the APIs that would like to do business in Nigeria are concerned about the credit record of their counterparties in the country. So I think those are the few points I'd like to mention. They conclude that yes, we've gone through challenges last year. There's a whole lot, you have a whole lot of lessons to take, and the environment today is right for us to take those lessons, take advantage of the opportunities, okay, and the various measures already put in place by the government as private sector, so that we can catalyze that sustainable economic growth that we all yearn for. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Innocent Ike. Thank you very much. It's very clear. You've told us what was, what is, and what we should be doing, not just as a country, but also as the chamber, which will also work for all our members. We'll jump right in to have Mr. Bismarck Rewani to share with us the facts as they are, the hope for the future, and then, of course, work that needs to be done, even as we have come into 2021. So I'll call on Mr. Bismarck Rewani, please. Your mic, Mr. Rewani.
Mr. Chairman, Kayode Follower, other members of the executive, Ben, the Deputy High Commissioner, all protocols observed. This short but very detailed presentation, I think I'll have to share my screen if you wait for a minute. Okay. Now, this event is happening today, following yesterday's inauguration in Washington. It's coincidental, but it's also very, very important to note that the United States is the world's largest economy. It's about $23 trillion. It's 25% of global output, and it's quite significant. The dollar as a currency is used for 75 to 78% of total trade transactions in the world. And about 60 to 65% of countries hold the dollar as external reserve. So it is the primary reserve currency in the world. And so when things happen, when there are changes in that economy, it affects all of us. So today, I'm going to quickly set the context, slide 1. Then I'll go into the Nigeria-British symbiotic relationship. I'll be gazing into 2021 with the leading economic indicators, what we expect. Then we'll look at the policy imperatives that we're going to respond to, and the risk footprints, summary and conclusion. But before I start, I want to say something. That is, the Nigerian economy itself had some pre-existing conditions before COVID. And the Nigerian policy-making community and decisions were to use this opportunity to get a reset and deal with the structural problems while dealing with the operational problems that came along. So some of the policy decisions that have been announced today, as unpleasant as they may seem, are addressing both the structural problems and the operational problems. I think I want to set that in context. Secondly, we want to talk about 2020. Innocent has carefully talked about 2020, but the situation is that, what a year. We had everything you can think about. It's a year for the first time. This is 1918. That's the slide you see there. Wear a mask or go to jail in 1918. The Spanish flu. In all, about 25 million people died in Spanish flu in 1918. 101 years later, we're having the same situation, but definitely because of technology and all of that, we're not having as many casualties, but it's been more disruptive. In 1918, it was just the year at the end of the First World War, and before we went into the the economic cycle that led to the Depression of 1929. For the first time in 2020, O levels, I've never heard of it in history. O levels, A levels, baccalaureate, all of these exams were canceled, not just postponed, they were canceled. SAT, GMAT, and all the standard tests from New Jersey were all postponed or canceled. For the first time we've known it, the Olympics was postponed until this year, we don't know. Wimbledon was canceled. Cinema houses, none. Music concerts or festivals, no audience in the stadium for the Premier Cup, Champions League and everything. No live fashion shows. Who knew in 2019 that this could happen in 2020? I've looked at all the forecasts. Nobody, not even the most astute risk managers, was able to predict that this kind of thing will happen, that one, there'll be a virus, and secondly, it would bring the world economy to its knees. So we are on unknown territory. But now we must live with it and deal with 2021, which is more important. So we went from virus to lockdown to recession to double-digit inflation and low interest rates. This is Nigeria. Nigeria was an outlier to some extent, especially because of the low interest rates and high inflation. So Nigeria has a stagflation situation, which is negative growth, and high unemployment at the same time. Well, so what next? Nigeria is going with the flow. Well, first of all, we had negative growth, -6 second quarter, -3 third quarter. I think we are projecting about -4 in the fourth quarter. For the whole year, we are talking about almost about -3.7 or 3.8. Inflation has got to 15.75% and is expected in January to go to about 16.1%. The currency has oscillated between 420 and 505, and it's now settled at about 475 for now. We'll talk about the currency in a minute. There's been excess money supply and money supply situation. The consumer has been squeezed, high PMS price, electricity tariff, subsidy removal, and also income from savings, interest rates dropped to about less than 1%. There was the NSAS protest, and there was massive insecurity. What a year. We say it's a year to forget. Now, like I said, the policymakers looked at structural change, tactical response, but had very low impact on the quality of lives of people. Well, so what next? 2021, different or deja vu? Totally different. Why? Because we are going what we can call from disorder to order, or whatever, from disruption to further eruption. So Biden is taking over. He signed 17 executive orders yesterday. He's gone back to the WHO. He's joined the climate agreement. He's going to revisit the Iran deal. And there's the post-Brexit situation, which we have to deal with. We have to deal with free trade in Africa, and we have to deal with COVID vaccinations. Now, what are we dealing with as Nigerians and this chamber? We have to accept, one, we are signatories to the ECOWAS protocol. Nigeria is about 60 to 65% of the ECOWAS region. We have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, Area Agreement, which is very important. We have the European Partnership Agreement between ECOWAS and the European Union. We have the Commonwealth of Nations, where there's going to be a lot of emphasis. So our British relationship will center around one, the trade, investment, and technology flows between Nigeria and Britain, but also with the wider Commonwealth of Nations. There's the African Single Aviation Market, which means an open skies agreement between African nations. For your information, the only profitable airline in Africa is Ethiopian Airlines, and even Ethiopian Airlines reported a loss, and they have the regional airline called Sky. All the others, Kenya Airways, South Africa Airways, are struggling. And then there will be the hub status of Nigeria as a refining hub, petrochemical hub, a trading hub, and also like Ghanaians are having the regasification things that are happening. So those are key things that we have to bear in mind. Biden win means climate change. It means nuclear non-proliferation treaties, it means world peace, it means financial cooperation, it means cybersecurity, and it means the norms of democracy, free press, and people behaving themselves in an orderly manner. So I think that will happen, and the world changed yesterday. Now, so the US will no longer be an isolationist. They will go to multilateral transactions. There will be constructive engagement with opponents and cooperation with allies. So the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the World Bank, the IMF, the World Trade Organization, and all of this will be much more assertive, and we'll go back to the normal way of doing things. Well, vaccine or no vaccine, between the vaccine manufacturers and the governments and the agencies, I think that by this time, in a year's time, we should have had some form of some peace. So what is the African context? First and foremost, African Continental Free Trade Agreement, a big area, 20, it has, intra-African trade is going to go from 20 to 50%, not in 1 year, but over time. It's expected that the GDP of these countries, which is about $2 trillion now, will go to $29 trillion by 2050, all things being equal. AU countries will be able to share welfare gains and so on. But what does it mean? It means that as Nigerians and Anglophone countries in Africa, they will be able to benefit, like I said earlier on, from the Commonwealth of Nations and the trade and investment flows there. We'll have very strong trading ties and historical ties with Britain, maintain strong ties with the European Union, because that's after China is second largest trading partner with the African countries. So all of this, it just expands the opportunities that we have. Well, if you look at this slide tells you trading partners. India is Nigeria's largest trading partner today. Then Spain, China, Netherlands, South Africa, Turkey, United States, Belgium. What are we going to see? We're going to see more South Africa, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Ethiopia, Egypt, Rwanda, Cameroon, and Nigeria, as well as our traditional trading partners, which include the US, European Union, the United Kingdom, and Britain, and of course, China and the Asian bloc. So change is as good as a rest, they say, so we are going back to normal times, and fair exchange, they say, is no robbery. Now, in the African continent, these are the big players. Nigeria is the largest with $448 billion of GDP, followed by South Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, Ghana. Of all these countries, I think Ghana and Nigeria and South Africa and Kenya, all of these countries are going to go into positive growth in 2021. South Africa will struggle a little bit, but will actually benefit in 2022. South Africa has problems of power supply and also has their own variant of the COVID. In terms of weighting, by 2021, Nigeria's GDP as a percent of total African GDP will drop from 22.9 to 20%. South Africa will expand from 14.4 to 14.5%. Kenya will stay flat at 4.5. Ethiopia will increase to 4%, and Ghana will stay flat. So of all those countries, Nigeria is the only one that will slow down compared to the rest of Africa. African inflation rates will average 8.5. Nigeria's inflation rate will average about 16%. Now, these are the trade figures. If we look at Africa as a whole, South Africa is responsible for 31% of total exports in Africa, Nigeria 28%, Angola 21%, Cote d'Ivoire 1%. But if you look at the imports, South Africa imports more than, so Nigeria, from an African context, has a trade surplus. So it means that South Africa imports to re-export, and Cote d'Ivoire has some of that as well. But basically, in the end, the UK and Nigeria is what we call the symbiotic relationship. This is what you've seen. Look at UK's growth in 2020, minus 9.8, and in 2020, an inflation of 0.85. Nigeria's growth is minus 4.1, and inflation of 13.2 on average for the year. But if you look at 2021, what do we expect? UK's growth will bounce back to 5.9% positive, and inflation will increase almost double to 1.9%, which is and so what does that mean to interest rates in the UK? The UK is going to have to deal with that, and Nigeria is expected to grow modestly, 1.1. Some people say maybe 1.5. But look at inflation. So if you look at that relationship, it tells you that Nigeria has a real inflation problem and has to deal with that. And we'll come to how to deal with that in a minute. We have what we call the CDC group, which was the Commonwealth Development Corporation. They announced today that they are targeting $1 billion of African investments in 2021, mainly Ethiopia, Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, and Ethiopia. This is a big opportunity. CDC, in partnership with Vodafone, Sumitomo Group, to bid for mobile telephone license in Ethiopia. They'll be doing some things in Nigeria, and I think there's going to be some oil sector related transactions in Nigeria as well. Why is it important? Britain is Nigeria's top source of capital investment, $594 million in Q3 2020 alone. Top destination for traded raw materials for infant use, put up for retail sale, $27.6 million. Third major import trading partner in Europe after Netherlands and Germany. Right now, it's no longer part of Europe, so it's a standalone. Third main export destination for other solid mineral products, including crude salt, after Brazil and Namibia, and fifth major export trading partner in Europe after Spain, Netherlands, France, and Italy. Okay, so we know it's all over, but the Nigeria-UK relationship is bound to strengthen. The visa arrangements and all sorts of things. Well, look at aviation. You have Virgin Atlantic and British Airways. Between those two, they control almost 30% of international network traffic in Nigeria. Recently, they've been surpassed by Emirates because of the Dubai aggression or the UAE aggression. So there's some competition there, but in terms of flows, in terms of medical tourism, in terms of education tourism, in terms of reinsurance, Britain plays a major role. So, Commonwealth, Pakistan, Nigeria, Canada, Australia, in terms of population, in terms of size, there are those flows. And of course, Canada is becoming a very important partner with Nigeria. So what does Nigeria stand to gain from Britain? Diaspora remittances are extremely important. I've talked about education tourism, I've talked about medical tourism, I've talked about financial investment, and very important, confirmation of credits for financial institutions. So you have HSBC, Barclays, Standard Chartered, and so they, in spite of the dollarization of the Nigerian economy, London is the center in which most of our credits are confirmed and most of our transactions are done. Nigerian banks have significant presence in the UK, so we come under multiple financial jurisdiction here between the Financial Conduct Authority, Financial Prudent Authority, and the Central Bank of Nigeria. So what are the big investments that we know? British Gas, Royal Dutch Shell, GSK, PZ, Diageo, PwC, Standard Chartered, Virgin Atlantic, BOC Gases, and others. There are quite a few others. But we have a British Airways, like I said earlier, and Virgin Atlantic. So what do we expect in 2021? I've talked about the protocol, ECOWAS protocol, I've talked about African Continental, we'll talk about trading partners. For Nigeria currency, I'm going to come and address the question of the value of the currency because it's very important. Forex rationing will reduce, and Forex there'll be more, the central bank will be more prolific in its selling of foreign exchange in the market, and we'll come to the rate in a minute. Domestic refining capacity will be built. The Dangote refinery gets finished next year, but the petrochemical and the fertilizer plant goes in. So the hub status and infrastructure build within a West African region becomes important. There'll be a lot of political infighting in Nigeria as democracy and the principle gets entrenched. The subsidies, petroleum subsidies have been removed, but there's still a forex part of the subsidy and will come. And then the accommodative policy stance of artificially low interest rates will probably come to an end this year. So we did a regression, our analysis here, and this is the best case scenario for Nigeria. I want you to take a look at it. We are assuming $60 a barrel price of oil and that production will go to 1.8, very unlikely. We are assuming that you'll find that if you take this in Q1, GDP will still be negative minus 1.5. The exchange rate official will be 403 and the inflation rate will be 15.3. But by Q2, because of the recovery in the economy, GDP will go positive 0.98, which is like 1%. The exchange rate will depreciate again to 427 and the inflation rate will go to 15.35. By Q3, because of the activities and hoping that interest rates will begin to increase, you would find that GDP will now expand by 1.54%. The exchange rate will depreciate to 446 and inflation will get up to 16%. Then by Q4, so if you look at it on average, in the year 2021, best case scenario is that GDP will expand at 0.75 because you have to discount the negative rates that happened in the previous quarters. The exchange rate average for the year will be about 435 and the inflation will be 15.78. This is one scenario. The next scenario, which is the worst case scenario and which is like today, price of oil will be $50 a barrel, but today we are at 55. Our production will be 1.5 million barrels, which is our quota, but today we are producing 1.1. And we are assuming that the average of $50 for the year, and we'll come up with an exchange rate. And this is what happens. If this situation continues, we will have, first quarter will have -2 GDP compared to because first quarter of 2020 was a good quarter for us. So you are comparing first quarter of 2020 with first quarter of 2021. The exchange rate official will be 403 and inflation will be 15.4. However, things begin to change. We get 0.27 growth in second quarter, the exchange rate goes to 430, inflation at 15.7. So let's go all the way. So Q3 and Q4, if you look at Q3 and Q4, you have positive growth of 1.15 in Q3 and 1.93, 2%, almost 2% in Q4. So the economy is recovering. And if you take the average, you will come up with about 0.32. But let's give or take, this is a worst case pessimistic scenario. Average exchange rate about 438 and the inflation rate for the average will be about 16.15 before it begins to taper down and begins to reduce. Now, this is the growth trajectory. If you look at from Q1 2020, you can see a typical W curve. And this is because so many things are happening. We'll be taking advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. The borders have been reopened. There will be the rationing of foreign exchange will reduce, and the central bank will be selling more foreign exchange. There will be some exchange rate adjustments. And so this is what the sectors that are going to be winning: ICT, construction, manufacturing, trading, right? And while the sections that will struggle initially are aviation, education, real estate, but as we go along, all the sectors begin to move. So gradual recovery in manufacturing, trading, and real estate as we go along. Double-digit price inflation initially, but then after a while, it begins to decline. You can see that clearly. Currency pressures will persist at both the parallel market and the INE window. We think that there'll be another currency adjustment, but we'll keep that to ourselves. But all projections, RENCAP says fair value is 499. We think that currency will adjust to around 420 in the official market. Don't forget that every 1% devaluation translates into 0.2% increase in inflation. So, but as the rationing reduces and more foreign exchange is sold to manufacturers, output will increase and that will bring down inflation in the world. So what are we looking at? In 2021, our balance of trade will, even though negative, will reduced to $3.5 billion only negative from current $6 billion negative. Terms of trade will work in our favor. The current account deficit will reduce from minus $10 billion to minus 8. External reserves will shrink. We think it goes down to about almost $30 billion, if not lower, maybe $28 billion, but still enough to, and that will help bring inflation down. The purchasing power parity value of the Naira will drop to around 415, and the power market will trade around 470, 480, and then come back to West 450 in the final analysis. So I&E window will go to about 420. These are projections. So low interest rates will remain in Q1, but I think by March, April latest, we begin to see a reversal in rates and a tightening because of one, sale of foreign exchange, two, the central bank will have to now will come to terms with the fact that inflation needs to be dealt with. Without inflation, you are not going to get, without inflation being curbed, investments will be low and growth will also be tepid. So this is where we see external debt will be a problem, but external debt we manage. We have a maturity on the 28th of January of $500 million, which we paid. Nigeria will go to the Eurobond market later in the year after having a policy agreement with the IMF and the World Bank. We do not expect any downgrades. We think that new borrowings will be targeted at projects and that the PIGB will pass. So there'll be, and the PIGB will have regulator, administrator, we will have a host community settler arrangement, and we'll also have greater fiscal incentives for the oil companies. The oil companies are not going to respond initially, but we'll take a look and some of them will begin to, as long as we can reduce what we call the above the ground risks, because Nigeria has below the ground risks are low because you can get oil in a good quantities in good reservoirs. But above the ground risk, which includes militancy, policy risks and all that are high. And so we'll see some of that. So oil production, we're talking about 1.5 million to 1.7 million barrels in 2021. And hopefully we'll get a good price. The consumer in 2021 is going to be squeezed. The VAT increase will stay at 7.5, not to 10%. Electricity tariff means that you pay more for electricity, but you get better quality electricity. And that's it. It's a win-win in the sense that the distribution companies will have more power. And every 1,000 megawatts increase in power, stable power, will translate into about 0.2 or 0.3% increase in growth. Because the price of oil is going to increase, we think that the price of PMS goes to 180 sometime towards the end of the year, 180 to 190. But then the effective price that you get petrol whenever you want it. And so rather than waiting and queuing. Now, the marginal propensity to import is about, we'll leave that figure here, it's about 0.28. And that figure tells you that for every increase in GDP, the import content only goes up by about 0.28%. Now, what sectors are you going to have opportunities? Manufacturing. Manufacturing will benefit from central bank selling of foreign exchange. Manufacturing will benefit from the intervention programs. Central bank, manufacturing will benefit from the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and economies of scale. So companies like Diageo, companies like Nestle, companies like Unilever will actually, and Nestle will increase their production in Nigeria and export across the borders and get the benefits. Telcos, you're going to see Vodacom, Airtel, MTN, and others. There's going to be massive growth in telecoms. And they are going to benefit also from the payment saving bank system and the mobile money programs. Banking, significant interest here and growth here because of Nigerian banks have African intent and are going to have Afrocentric things. Manufacturing, again, I refer to the Dangote Group's activities, which are industrial and manufacturing. So you're going to have huge output in fertilizers, in petrochemicals, in cement manufacturing and export, and some other areas. There's trade, both wholesale and retail trade, which is 16% of GDP, is going to expand. It's growing at about 1.2% now. And like I said before, manufacturing was minus 8% last year. In 2020, it's going to be growing at about almost 3 or 4% in 2021 towards the end of the year. The same thing, wholesale and retail trade, which has been constrained, begins to expand again. And this employs about 16% of the population. Agriculture has been doing about 1.25%. We think agriculture grows some more, but it has to be supported because of the disruption due to herdsmen and all of the others will affect it, but certainly better use of fertilizer, better improved seedlings, and the payment and settlement system, which is more efficient, will lead to the growth in agriculture, and there will be exports across the borders to other African countries as well. So big players in manufacturing, Nestle, Flour Mills of Nigeria, Diageo, Unilever, and many others, BUA, Dangote. Telecoms, we have MTN, Airtel, IHS, and so on. In banking, we're looking at Access Bank, GT Bank, Stanbic, ETI, and UBA, a very interesting play there, especially those that have African prints. So those with African footprints will be Access Bank, UBA, EcoBank, which is ETI, and Stanbic. Those are, you have to watch those guys. The Dangote Group is also of great interest. Insurance, we have AXA Mansard, we have Custodian Allied. We like Custodian Allied. ICO is becoming strong. So we have that, and they're quite interesting plays. Of course, the Old Mutual and other big players are coming into Africa, into Nigeria for insurance. For building materials, we have Dangote, Lafarge, and BUA, all of them doing very well. Trade, we're going to be seeing a lot of e-commerce activity and small and medium scale enterprises. For agriculture, we like Okomo, we like Presco, and we're seeing some other interests in areas of rubber and fertilizer. So what are the policies that we're going to be looking at? Monetary policy, the expansionary monetary policy will stop, and there will be a change in direction. Look out in the first quarter, interest rates begin to take a different, and that will have an impact. Once interest rates start increasing, you have to watch out for this stock market. People have to be careful, because once interest rates increase, stock prices drop. That's a natural reaction. So you want to know the time to get out and when to get in. Okay. So 2021 budget will be implemented. There will most likely be a supplementary budget. If prices increase, we increase the spending. If there's a shock, there'll be a reduction in spending. The federal government is very determined in making sure that there's fiscal consolidation and they don't overspend and overborrow. The PIB will pass. There'll be no going back to subsidies, so you have to expect and live with the fact that cost-reflective tariffs and petrol prices are going to be moving in the same direction as oil prices. So you can't benefit both ways. In other words, if the price of petrol increases, then the price of oil increases, the price of petrol will increase. So what are the risks? The risks are simple. Could there be wide outbreak of coronavirus? Could Nigeria go into a prolonged recession? Could there be riots like NSAS? Could there be a recession? Could the price of oil fall because of Iran pumping more oil after a new deal? Are we going to see outbreaks of violence in the Niger Delta because of the PIB, which gives a lot of power to the host communities and the battles amongst host communities, domestic battles? Are we going to see that? We really don't know, but these are scenarios that we have to bear in mind. So in summary, I'd like to conclude by saying 2021 will still be a challenging, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And by this time in 2022, you are not likely to be using face masks anymore. You are more likely to have been vaccinated, members of this audience. You'll be traveling across Africa without visa restrictions. You will have access to more e-commerce businesses. You will continue having online classes and virtual meetings. There will be telemedicine. There will be so many things. Many things will not go back to the other, but obviously we'll be in a safer world, more likely to be vaccinated. It won't be a coronavirus, with something else, who knows, but definitely we'll be in a safer place. So, gradual recovery, likely increase in diaspora remittances. There'll be a year of economic reforms, and at the end of this year, all you'll be talking about is politics of 2023 in Nigeria. The positive growth will start in Q3. Inflation will remain a problem, but will begin to subside and become lower towards the end of the year. Currency pressures will persist initially, but with exchange rate flexibility, this will see some stability there. And CBN is likely to shift its stance towards tightening, and because they have to contain inflation. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rwani. I think we have a lot to chew this afternoon from the conversation from Mr. Innocent DK, and then the ballpark that you've also given us this afternoon. I like what you said about the fact that Nigeria had a pre-existing condition before the coronavirus in March 2020. And then, of course, that had huge effects on all facets of the economy. You've also clearly defined the fact that we're experiencing a stagnation, low interest rates, we're moving from disruption to eruption, and we have quite a number of questions here from the attendees. I'm just going to go straight to the questions, and then we'll take it up from there. As we've seen, Mr. Rwani has given us, the facts as they are, the reality of where we are and what the situation is going to be like in 2021. And then, of course, the hope for the future. What are the things that we should hope for? Where are the sectors that are going to work and the sectors that particularly won't work? My first question will be clearly defining this for those in the SME sectors. I know that you said something about e-commerce for the SME sector. But for SMEs that are looking at the issues of the, yes, low interest rates, but then of course, double-digit inflation, looking at, all other issues that you've clearly defined, what should they be thinking about in terms of their businesses as it were?
This question for me?
Yes, please.
Could you just repeat that a minute?
Okay, so the question is about SMEs. I know you mentioned the issue of e-commerce
Yes.
for the SMEs, but in light of the various issues that you talked about, the global GDP decline, the inflation rate in Nigeria, and the few last slides that you gave, the possibility of another lockdown in the country, what should SMEs begin to think about? It's still very early in the year.
Okay, let me first of all say that, let me see, I'm not on Skype connect. So 1 minute just to get me connected. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Now the SMEs are part of a bigger value chain. That is SME. If you are trading or you are in light manufacturing, you are probably producing goods for a bigger manufacturer. You are producing some things, processing some items as in a raw material value chain. So basically, to the extent that if you are producing for a bigger company, say you are producing for Unilever, producing for Diageo, Guinness, you are producing for Shell, what happens is that as long as those companies have their eyes on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and want to compete in Africa, one of the key things is that they have to be cost efficient. right? And so you as a small, medium scale player, you have to be as efficient as possible so that your price, you can pass part of the price efficiency to your benefactor, that is to the guy who buys your products, and therefore you can pass all of that and become competitive in the market. If not, the guys can go across the border to Benin Republic, produce at a lower cost, and under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, they can import those into Nigeria with maximum of 5% duty. And let me tell you something. It takes one day only to clear a container in Benin Republic, in Porto Novo, or in Lome, while it takes 16 days to clear the same container in Lagos, in Apapa or Tinkan. So what are the guys going to do? They would rather import into Lome, produce in Lome, or import into Benin, produce in Benin, and bring the goods across to Nigeria. So part of the reform, institutional reform, that is going to take place in 2021 is to make sure our ports are efficient, our costs are competitive, and therefore be able to compete. So as far as Nigeria is concerned, that will help also to bring down inflation. I think it's one of the things that there'll be the policy changes, there'll be the market-driven competitiveness, and then more than anything, there'll be the size of the market, which is an opportunity.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come back to the questions, but first we're going to take our sponsors ad, and then we'll come back to take the remaining questions, please.
Thank you.
You are a masterpiece, and it's time for you to shine with the Polaris Pearl account, the unique account for women on vision. Designed to cater to the lifestyle needs of female professionals, entrepreneurs, and homemakers, the Polaris Pearl account financially empowers all female customers. The Polaris Pearl account is also the only variant account that comes as both savings and current account to best suit your financial needs. It's your time to shine, ladies. Visit polarisbanklimited.com to get started today.
Always hit your financial target with Polaris Target Savings, the account designed to help you hit your financial bullseye no matter your goal. To encourage you to save, the following have been disabled. Savings over time can be migrated as a lump sum to a higher yield investment option, as well as other benefits. Your account can be opened on our website, USSD, digital banking app, or at any of our bank branches. So no matter your goal, hit your financial bullseye every time with your Polaris Target Savings account.
Thank you very much and welcome back. We'll go right into the questions because we have quite a number of questions. If you still have questions, please input them into the Q&A box right there on your screen, and we'll try and take as many questions as possible this morning. So Mr. Rwani, I mean, quite a number of questions here from your presentation and linking that to Mr. Innocent Ike's presentation as well. So I will take some of the questions that are highlighted here, which is in direct response to your presentation, Mr. Rwani. The first question here says, why is Nigeria abysmally poor in exports? And what can policy experts and exporters do to improve the export-import imbalance? mean, this is also linking the fact that we're talking about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, and looking at it from the trade point of view as well. Mr. Rewani. I think we lost Mr. Rewani. Is Mr. Rewani back with us? Okay. Is Mr. Innocent Ike there with us? Okay, Mr. Innocent. So while we wait for Mr. Rewani to come back, would you like to take that question? Do you see, from the question, it's clear that there's an imbalance in our export and import analysis, as it were. How can we change this? What can policymakers, do? Are there policies that need to change in this regard, from your perspective? Your mic.
Thank you very much for the question. And indeed, this is not a new question, as it were, not a new issue on the table for discussion. One of the key issues is that to reduce your dependence on import, a number of things you need to do from government regulatory perspective. One is that you need to have the capacity to even produce. Okay, when you do not have the capacity to produce, you can't begin to talk about reducing dependence. Let's look at what has happened to food production and supplies. Let's look at rice. Let's look at fish. We were spending millions of dollars queuing to bring in rice from Thailand and from other Asian countries. And indeed, nutrition experts told us that those bags of rice we are bringing were bags of rice that have spent several years on the shelf and didn't have the same nutritional values as the ones that were produced fresh from the farm that we consume in Nigeria. It took a long time for that to come. So the government, for instance, I think it must have been over 10 years when the government incentivized the establishment of rice milling plants across the country. And then we then found that today, with consistent efforts, focus, and incentive, we're able to produce rice that, one, that have very high nutritional content, that come clean, without all the black, spots of black heads you have in them. So one is that we need to create the capacity to produce before you begin to talk about substitution. If you don't have that, people will almost die. People will continue to buy at whatever price, even if they have to use their last savings to buy. So that's one perspective to it. It doesn't just start by saying, oh, let's have fiscal policies that say lock the borders. You can't lock the borders when you cannot meet or satisfy the needs of the people. I mean, as a responsible government, you must listen. So I mean, that's one point I want us to bear in mind. There's several things around fiscal policy initiatives that you can put in place, but as a nation, it's not an overnight thing. Rome was not built in the night, okay, or rather in a day. So we need to begin gradually to say, what areas do we prioritize? So if we deal with food and we dealt with food successfully, what other areas do we need to prioritize and make sure the policy and incentives, to support those investments in those areas are there and they are consistently, deployed. Let me allow Mr. Rwanda is back to take his question.
Thank you. You did a good job. Basically, when you talk about opportunities and diversification of the economy, the diversification process is not an end game; it's a process. And what has happened is essentially is that The currency adjustment is critical to achieving this. The fact that from the time we started moving from 305 to 340 to 360 to 390 to wherever we are, we've seen a shift in the production function. People have been producing, a lot of people have been producing locally. We've seen a lot of people making final investment decisions on how to produce ethanol locally, how to produce components locally, how to source more efficiently. And look at the change in our trading partners. Nigeria is buying a lot more from Thailand, a lot more from Vietnam, a lot more from China, a lot more, not because of anything, because of cost considerations and currency values. The Chinese currency has technically lost value against the US dollar around almost 11 or 12% in the last 2 years. So they're being brandished as currency manipulators. But if you're trying to buy quality in Europe, in Germany, or you're trying to buy a Mercedes-Benz car relative to a Japanese car or a car made in Vietnam or in South Korea, or you want to buy an LG washing machine relative to a washing machine made somewhere else, all of these things are making it much more competitive. So I think, like I said in the presentation, cost considerations and without compromising quality altogether, and making sure that you're competitive so that the person who is buying your output is also competitive across Africa and is able to export. So those are going to be driving consideration. One, to survive the COVID. Two, to survive the lockdown and the post-lockdown. And three, to be competitive in a new African environment based on how you can reduce your costs. I think that's what's going to drive the opportunity going on forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Riwani. Our moderator dropped off, so I'll stand in while she's trying to reconnect. I have a question from Funike Ogundiran. What policies will the CBN introduce to combat high inflation rates? How does this affect financial institutions and investors?
Okay. I cannot speak for the CBN. Is an independent arm of government. I act as one of the presidential advisors on economic policy, and the CBN is free to take part of our advice. But I suspect that since inflation has become a hydra-headed problem, and inflation has a lot of components, there's cost-push inflation, demand-pull inflation, there's exchange rate pass-through inflation, and there's also producer price inflation. And when I say this because anytime you adjust the exchange rate, it also, people pass it on to the final consumer. Every time you reduce certain things, adjust certain prices, it affects consumers. So there are two things. One, the interest rates, you cannot have interest rates at 1% and inflation at 17% or 16%. You need to bring interest rates higher. So as if savings is mobilized, if you increase savings, you increase investment. If you increase investment, you increase production. So that is standard economic theory. And so I suspect the central bank will be moving towards tightening. The central bank will be adjusting the currency value so that they don't create shocks. I suspect that the central bank will continue with its development programs, that is intervention, anchor borrowers, and some of the other parts of it. So when you put all of that together with the investment, together with the fiscal infrastructure impact, for example, if you take the Lagos to Ibadan rail that is going to be commissioned in the next 2-3 weeks, you'll be able to move goods from Apapa to Shagamu and Ibadan within hours. And then from there, there'll be the bonded warehouses. Rather than congest Apapa, everybody will move to Shagamu to take their products. It's going to affect the Takwe Wari mill. It's also going to affect that. Some of these things that will actually help to debottleneck the country and increase productivity, because in the end, it is productivity and growth that will liberate the economy, and that will have an impact on your business. If not, you are going to be hearing data and you have no impact on your business. You're hearing data, oh, the economy is growing, the economy is doing that. But what is important to people in this audience is how does it affect my business? How do I become more profitable? How do I increase my sales? How do I make sure I can get foreign exchange when I need it to manufacture? How do I get power supply? Those are the key issues that are going to be addressed. And you will see most of what I call impact analysis. You'll see impact happening in 2021. The days of, this is what happening, this was what just happened before, we are better off. No, you are competing now directly with Ghana. You are competing directly with Togo. You are competing with Cameroon. So if people cannot get it from here, they will go across the border and get it, and you cannot stop them because we've already signed and ratified the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So it's the best thing that happened to us in terms of making us competitive. And if we cannot get it from Africa, we get it from Britain. If we cannot get it from Britain, we'll get it from China, anywhere. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Riwani. The next question from Olushola Falodun. In simple terms, Mr. Riwani, kindly explain how the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement will benefit Nigerian manufacturers. Which specific economic activity will be positively affected? Do we have distribution channels to move goods within the sub-Saharan Africa? I think there are 3 questions in that, sir. So I'll take it. Okay, did you get all of them?
I got all of them.
Thank you.
Let me simplify it. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement says that if goods are produced in Africa and country of origin can be proven, then you will pay a maximum duty of 5%. But if you bring goods and come and pack them together, say we bring wheat into Nigeria and just mill it and send it across, it will not be considered. That is wheat that came from America. So let me give you a simple example. If a car, a Toyota car or a Mercedes-Benz car, fully manufactured in South Africa, and you buy it from South Africa, you will pay 5% duty. But if you buy it from Japan or buy it from Dubai or buy it from Tokyo or somewhere else or China, you will pay the full duty, which is 30%, but you will not pay the levy anymore. So as far as the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, Nigeria has reduced the duty on commercial vehicles to almost the levy to 5%. Reduce it. So you will see as from February, March, you'll be seeing the price of cars drop sharply. The price of, especially if they are manufactured in Africa, if they are bought in South Africa, everybody has it. All of them have plants, not assembly plants, full manufacturing plants in South Africa. Toyota, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, everybody has it there. If you bring it from there, it will be much cheaper, and you pay, and then it will translate into lower price of transport fares. It will also mean that you are able to produce more efficiently. But if your roads are no good, even if you bring a new car in, it won't take long before it becomes a broken down vehicle. So it's not either, or it's a whole series of things that have to happen together, but they will happen together because we have to be competitive. So if I were to take, say, cement, Nigeria has competitive advantage in cement. We can produce as much cement. We have, Dangote has 20 to 25 million tons, Goa has another 5, Lafarge. If we are producing 40 to 50 million tons, we can produce all the cement that is needed in Nigeria and needed to be exported. And so whoever is supplying Dangote gypsum or granite and all of that will also make money from that. If we are exporting petrochemicals or fertilizers, the same thing will happen. You buy the urea, you buy the gas from a Nigerian source, make it into a fertilizer and export it. If Guinness or Nigerian breweries or South African breweries are producing here, they will get their ethanol here, get everything here, produce, and it is cheaper for them to produce in Nigeria and ship the goods to Ghana, to Togo, to Lome, and all. And so they will close down all the sub plants in all those West African countries and produce here, so that whoever is supplying Guinness, Nigerian breweries, South African breweries, Unilever, Nestle will do a good job. If you are supplying palm oil, so if Guinness is buying palm oil to make its Maggi cube, if Indomie is United Foods is buying some stuff, palm oil, then they will buy it here, produce it here, and ship it across the border. So there will be what we call scale economies and localization of industry. In some areas where we are not competitive, we will have to lose those things to others. But where we are competitive, like I've mentioned, in cement manufacturing, in maybe tomato paste manufacturing, toothpaste manufacturing, and all of that, we'll be able to do it here and ship it across, while we will also have to import across from other countries. And that's what's going to happen. But because of this, you cannot have the price of petrol in Ghana being, or in Togo and Cameroon being 300 naira a liter and yours being 160 naira a liter. Something's going to happen. So with Dangote's refinery producing for the whole of West Africa, the price of petrol in those countries will go down, while the price of petrol in Nigeria will probably increase, but it will create more jobs and more output and GDP growth. I don't know if I've addressed all the questions.
Brilliant, Mr. Adewani, brilliant. The next question from Dakpo Olowu. Dakpo wants you to look at the crystal ball and tell us when Nigeria will have double-digit growth and what must we do to ensure that takes place.
Well, double-digit growth will happen if we are able to accept certain realities. I think we are getting close to that. We haven't accepted it yet. Output is constrained by productivity. So labor productivity, skills, and capital stock, gross capital formation. For you to have gross capital formation, it means that Akin Oshitoki will have to take some of his money is kept outside and agree to come and take the risk to invest in Nigeria, right? Hini Abimbola will have to take some of the money she keeps elsewhere out of this country and bring it back to Nigeria to invest. Innocent Ike will have to bring whatever is kept aside under his pillow and bring it out and invest it. Now, Kayode Falowo will do the same. He'll bring all the money he has hidden under the trees, bring them out and put them out there and invest. What will make them do this? What will make all of these people do this? They will do this when they are confident that the investment will give them a decent return and nobody is going to change the rules on them. It is that fear that anything, why should I bring my nest in here? And then somebody just wakes up tomorrow and say, I don't like your face. And they can say, oh, if you don't have a NIN, you can't transfer your money. Say, no, I don't want that. You put on the television, you see thousands of people trying to get a NIN. And I say, well, but I don't have, and if you don't have it by tomorrow. So those things, we have to stop doing a lot of dumb things, right? And then people will not be happy to bring their money in. When they bring their money in, and I'm talking about Nigerians, right? Nigerians will bring their money in, international investors will bring their money in, Nigerians will stop taking money out, then we'll have a capital stock, which will give us what we call total factor productivity positive. Right now we are -6 in total factor. So if we get that right, then you will get double-digit growth. You will not have stranded projects. You will not have rail lines built between Badagry and and Costain for 5 years. You are paying interest, or over 15 years. You are paying interest on the loans, but they are not producing anything. There are no rails, no trains to the Lagos, the Victoria Island to Ekpe Expressway, 90 kilometers. For 12 years, we've been trying to build it. We can't finish it. All we get up to is Jakonde or Aja, and then it stops there. You can't afford to have stranded projects. All those things have to happen. So the answer is simple. When we are confident and when we are ready to respect the interest of our own investors and not shake them down with new rules every day. Oh, you must have a NIN, you must have this, you must have that. You cannot do that as well. Remittance. When we are ready to do that, then you will get double-digit growth very quickly. China did it. 30 years ago, China's GDP per head, the income per capita per head was half that of Nigeria. Today, it's 5 times that of Nigeria, and they have a bigger population. So I have no doubt in my mind that we will get there and get there sooner than we think.
Thank you very much, Mr. Riwani. I have one from Usha Hemba. This gentleman is a bit worried about the national debt burden. He wants you to advise government, how government should handle this.
Well, every time they say this, I always remember my late father. My late father called me many years ago and said, "You are an economist, I'm a lawyer. this national debt, and this was many, many years ago. What are they, first of all, who is borrowing? What are they using it for? And why is it becoming a burden to me who had nothing? I don't know how the government is borrowing. I don't know what they're using it for, but every day they say. So he said, my son, tell me, can they calculate the total debt of Nigeria and divide it by the population and let me pay my own and finish, and now I'm free of debt, and they give me a certificate? And I laughed and I said, I wish it was that easy. So it's not that easy. The debt problem, you are borrowing to meet the shortfall of your investment requirement because investments are not coming in. If investments are coming in, the amount of debt you need to raise will be lower, and your debt absorptive capacity will be higher. And therefore, the output from this will be much more efficient. So I'm afraid until we build the confidence of investors, you will have to make the bridge this thing with debt. And this debt, part of it will be stolen, part of it will be wasted. So, and by the time they put penalty and interest and all sorts of things on it, the generation coming, we cannot pay our debt and say, okay, let me pay for my children, and say, okay, we are debt free. No, it doesn't work that way. We just have to make sure that government is efficient and policy efficient. I tell you something, the IMF, the World Bank, the Eurobond investors are insisting that we do the right thing so that we are able to service the debt. If not, if they lend to us and we're going to default, we are in trouble. So I wouldn't worry about it. There's a debt problem, there's the destitution, multidimensional poverty, there's the low productivity, and more than anything else, there's the distorted exchange rate, which has to be resolved.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ruwani. I'll throw this one and hand over to our moderator, who is back on the panel. A council member, Mr. Tachobayo, wants you to give us the outlook for the solid minerals sector. Thank you.
Okay, solid minerals. Look, to be honest with you, gold, copper, and all these other things are there. You know why there's a problem with solid minerals? Because it's the only way you can take it out, convert it, sell it in foreign exchange, in fact, smuggle it out and keep the foreign exchange. If the exchange rate is in equilibrium, nobody is going to be, you're not going to have people shooting people in Zamfara state because they want to illegal mining of gold. Because everybody's doing it. It's like bunkering of oil. So I think that once the exchange rate policy puts the exchange rate in equilibrium, and then you have your security apparatus working rather than working for the smugglers, because that's what's happening. They're working for the smugglers and moving things across the border. You will have people like Rio Tinto and all the others coming into Nigeria to come and invest. None of those guys will invest as long as you don't have a clear policy. So first thing, PIGB. Secondly, the Minerals Act, which allows international investors to come in. When those things happen, for crying out loud, yesterday, Glencore agreed to sell their interest in the copper mines in Zambia back to the government for $1.5 billion. Right? So, but Glencore is in Nigeria. What is Glencore doing in Nigeria? Glencore is buying petrol and importing it into Nigeria to sell in the petrol stations here. Glencore, Vitor, Trafigura. Instead of coming here to come and invest in our mines and our gold mines and our copper mines and tin and others, they're actually just importing things because it makes more sense to import into Nigeria and make money out of it. So the solid mineral area will work with iron and steel, with copper, with gold, and all these other things, as long as you now have an exchange rate which is in equilibrium. 1, 2, you have policies that are definable, and when you have big players like Rio Tinto and others coming in, De Beers and others coming to this country to come and prospect, because if Shell and ExxonMobil and Chevron can come into this country in oil, there's no reason why Rio Tinto and others cannot come in for minerals.
Thank you so much. And apologies,
because I need to.
You need to run. We have quite a lot of questions coming in. So one of the questions I'm going to take now is, what are we likely to see as we move on in the new year in the money and FX market? as this will determine how the retail and manufacturing businesses will shape up. That's one of the questions. And I think there's still quite a number of questions around the after, in terms of learning from what lessons can we learn as we go into signing the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement, and how Britain is trying to divorce itself from a similar arrangement. So if you can take that.
Yes, let me tell you this. See, what everybody should understand in this audience is that we are going in, Biden came into power yesterday. We are going to a global trading village. So there's going to be more trade. There's going to be regional integration. There's going to be flow of people, trade, goods, and money, and all that. Every trade transaction has to be settled in a currency. If the currency is not in equilibrium, you will not be able to settle it. You are either going to borrow or you are going to be into ration. That will stop. So in the year 2021, we'll be moving more towards convertible currencies across the world. We're moving to more global trade, and then we're moving to more open markets. The era of closing borders and locking things down and all of that will be is over. So once you know that, then the thing is that your customer is either in Lagos, Abuja, Kaduna, Accra, Porto Novo, Lome, and therefore, if it's coming from Lome, you would use an African Central Bank. You say, Access Bank, I want to sell to my product, and I want that customer to pay into Access Bank in Accra. How you convert the CDs and all of that into Naira is a different story. But all I want to do to move my goods there. The same thing will happen the other way if they're exporting to us. So the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, the African Single Market Aviation, the payment and settlement of transactions will all center around liberal market conditions and payment of goods and services, either by your mobile money app, by your whatever it is, Momo agent or what have you. All of this means that the currency value will be the true value, or the changing your in exchange for goods, you get currency, and if you don't get in the currency you like, you take in the currency that you like. So I think that there will be adjustments of the currency value, not once but frequently. There'll be a flexibility in exchange rate, just like you have across most countries in the world. So Nigeria will, when Nigerians come to terms with that, and it will be done this year, you'll find that output will increase, employment will increase, and insecurity will reduce. So it means that if you are not competitive, in Nigeria, you cannot be competitive anywhere else. If you're not competitive in Africa, you cannot be competitive. So you will leave businesses where you're not competitive and move to businesses that you're competitive. If it is producing cassava that makes you competitive, Nigeria is the largest producer of cassava in the world. If it is yams, you do that. So instead of going to buy yams in Ghana, you buy it, you produce and sell it across Africa. So we will have what we call comparative advantage in certain products. Where we don't have, we will import, and there'll be no restrictions. So that is what we are going away from: restrictions and border controls to open markets and competitiveness. That's what's going to happen.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I don't know if you can just take one final one, because I think, yes, one final one. And this final one is really, so about 2 or 3 questions together, but they actually are around the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. So the first one is, how will it affect manufacturers? Will it benefit them positively, or will there be a negative reaction? And then what are the appropriate policies and programs that can happen within the country that will also help growth in terms of even local players within the market? Do we have distribution channels already existing? Will new ones be opened so that we can move goods, within sub-Saharan Africa back and forth? And how does, will all of this play in terms of even the Naira devaluation that we're talking about?
Okay, let me try to address it practically. I have a sorghum, what sorghum is called Guinea corn. And I produce Guinea corn in a town called Saminaka, in the border between Plateau State and Kaduna State. I have an option of selling my Guinea corn to somebody who is making feed, livestock feed. I have the option of selling my Guinea corn to Guinness, who will use it to make malt, Dubic malt or Guinness Malta or something. I have the option of selling to somebody who's going to make kunu, which they eat in northern Nigeria. Now, I ask myself, the man who wants to buy it for kunu, Guinness wants to buy it to make malt, and the guy who wants to use it to make livestock feed have to give me a price. If not, I'll carry my guinea corn across the border and somebody will buy it from me and you cannot stop me. So what does it mean? If Guinness is buying more and Guinness is producing more Guinness malt to take across the whole of West Africa, it means the demand for guinea corn will increase. If its demand for guinea corn increases, the price increases, then I will have bigger acreage. I will have to buy from Notore more fertilizer. I will have to go to IITA to buy more seedlings to have them, so I can have 2 or 3 harvests a year rather than 1 harvest a year for guinea corn, right? And if I do that and somebody else is buying corn to make ethanol, because instead of importing ethanol, is now making ethanol from corn and cassava, right? So what does it mean? The cassava farmer will have more demand, he will employ more people, he will have more demand for credit. Innocent will have places to put all the deposits he has in his bank, sitting down there doing nothing. We now give it to the guinea corn man, give it to the man who is producing cassava, producing that, give it to Guinness to buy, give it to Unilever to buy things, give it to Trafigura and all that. So there'll be greater economic activity. And this is not 5 years. This is going to happen in 2021, 2022. So it's here. And therefore, it wouldn't matter what the currency value is, as long as I'm selling my goods and I'm making money. It wouldn't matter what the inflation rate is, as long as I'm employing people and creating jobs. So, because we call it a natural rate of growth and natural rate of inflation. So but once you have that, but if you have constriction, oh, you can't do this, oh, you can't do that, oh, you can't go, the border is closed, oh, you can't do that, oh, all those things are constraints to growth. We need to open up and believe, just open up borders, open up our minds, right? Because now they say, oh no, we're going to stop rice and all that. Whether you like it or not, imported rice is in the shop there in front of you, and people are buying it. Okay, because if there's a demand, there will be a supply. I don't care where it comes from, and that is how I want to close this thing. That the reality is here. The world started a new day yesterday with Biden. He has signed the 17 executive orders. There are going to be more. There's going to be world trade. There's going to be much more flows between Africa and America and China. So the world is going to be a better place. So I think all we have to do, let's get vaccinated so that at least we can stay here to enjoy it. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Mr. Ariwani, we must thank you so much for such a great outing today. There was so much passion on the panel, and I am sure that so many people who ask questions are satisfied that they have the solutions that they require and are fully charged for 2021. We thank you for always honoring our invitation, and we look forward to seeing you in 2020.
We have sent the slides to everybody, so you all get it.
Okay, our moderator is back, so I'll yield to her. Thank you, Mr. Ariwani.
Thank you, my chair. Thank you. Sorry, the network keeps throwing me off. Thank you very much, Mr. Ariwani. I see a number of people sending messages. Their questions weren't answered. We apologize for the time. We've already spent over almost 2 hours on this, but you can be sure that the presentation will be sent to everyone who registered. All the attendees, as long as we have your registration details, we will send the presentation slides to you. Thank you very much, Mr. Innocent Ike. Thank you very much, Mr. Ariwani. I will at this point hand over to DPI Adeyemi. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ini, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure that, like me, you have enjoyed the time spent in the past 2 hours. Mr. Rimari, as usual, has not disappointed, and he has given us significant food for thought. Without a doubt, we are all better equipped to deal with and surmount the challenges of 2021, and indeed take full advantage of the opportunities that the year presents. It assures us that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I am particularly expectant of a safer world from Q3 2022. We will get vaccinated once the vaccine is here. Before I proceed with the rest of my thanks, I would just like to quickly bring to your attention our forthcoming program. Like I had said has been said at the beginning, we have quite a lot of exciting programs lined up for the year. The one that you should be looking out for now is that will take place in February the 18th, is the Nigerian-British Trade and Investment Expo, themed Unlocking the Future of Anglo-Nigerian Trade. So, on behalf of the President and Chairman of Council, Mr. Kayode Falowo, I thank you all very much for your attendance at our first event in the new year. I thank our sponsor, Polaris Bank, for its generosity. I thank the British Deputy High Commissioner, Mr. Ben Louis Jones, OBE, for the goodwill and the very warm and collaborative relationship we continue to enjoy with the British High Commission. Many thanks to Mr. Economy himself, the very cerebral Mr. Bismarck Rwani, Mr. Innocent Ike, the MD of Polaris Bank. And I thank you very much, Ini, for your very professional moderation of the session. I salute the chairman and members of the programs committee for putting this excellent event together, even as we look forward to many more equally engaging sessions in the forthcoming months. I thank our very hardworking secretariat team who continue to raise the ante. I enjoin those of you who are not yet members of the NBCC to join us today. As you have seen, we have quite a lot of things that you can benefit from. We have a robust networking platforms, and indeed you would not regret joining us. So the details of how to join are on the screen right now. You can send a chat in the chat box, and we'll contact you. So once again, I thank you all for your attendance and look forward to welcoming you at our forthcoming events. Do enjoy the rest of the day, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And please follow all our social media platforms so you can keep abreast with what the chamber is doing. Thank you very much. Over to the Secretariat at this point.